Well, we must first understand why special petroleum tax was was introduced. It was introduced in 2015, actually the 2015 budget, and we introduced it under certain circumstances and under certain conditions. The circumstances were this. You recall that in November 2014, when Setepe went to Parliament to present the 2015 fiscal year budget, we had put the benchmark revenue at $54 per barrel. And then we had also projected that we were going to be producing about 100,000 barrels of crude a day. So on the basis of that, we were able to make a projection for the revenues for the 2015 in terms of petroleum revenue. Fast forward, we had petroleum prices, that's crude prices, collapsing in the international market. We came as low as around $25 per barrel. 2, we also had a situation where because of the FPSO Kwame Nkrumah was having challenges, particularly the turret bearing had a challenge, and so it had affected the volumes of production. So we're now producing far lower than we had projected. These two conditions, that is the low prices in the crude oil, the low prices of the crude in the international market, and then the lower volumes that we're producing, these two prices, this then reduce our total petroleum revenues. And so to be able to make up for that, we went to Parliament to introduce what we call the special petroleum tax, to raise money to plug that difference that was going to be created because of the low volumes and the low prices in the international market. However, in that, every tax is backed by law. In that particular law that introduced the special petroleum tax, we put in what we call a sunset clause. A sunset clause simply means is that is when we had a terminality for the law for the tax. So we said that by December 2017, that tax should not exist again on our petroleum tax. And the reason why we made that decision was that we were sure that by December 2017, crude prices would have gone up, and the volumes that we're producing at Jubilee would have also gone up, and therefore it will make up for the revenue shortfall in terms of petroleum revenue, and therefore there will not be the need to burden Ghanaians again with the special petroleum tax. You recall that when that happened, the MPP quickly came and described it as a nuisance tax. And in fact, His Excellency John Mahama was described as a man with a devil's heart by the women's organizer of the NPP. So fast forward, when we came to December 2017, where the sunset clause was supposed to kick in, we were expecting that tax was going to be taken off. What the NPP did was that they reintroduced it, but this time made it as a fixed tax. So today, as you see it, it is for every liter of petrol you buy, it is $46 per barrel, 46 pesos per liter. The question you need to ask yourself is that, what is the justification for still keeping that tax in the price builder, particularly when crude oil prices have now moved from 25 to 90? So it means that we are selling our crude at a higher price. 2, our volumes have increased not only in Jubilee, but we've added 2 other fields, that's 10 and then Sankofa. So in terms of volumes, the volumes are also high. So it means that Ghana is making so much money as a result of the petroleum revenues. So what is the justification for still keeping the 46 pesos per liter on the price build-up? That's why we indicated that has to be taken off. 2, my brother, every village, every town, every cottage, every house falls under either a district, a municipal, or a metropolitan area. You understand my point? Now, if you see the district assemblies common fund that is disbursed quarterly to all district assemblies, all municipal assemblies, all metropolitan assemblies, you realize that there is a charge that is deducted at source, and it is described as sanitation and fumigation charges. So it means that if they were bringing Bongo district assemblies money to Bongo, they deduct part of our money to take care of sanitation and take care of fumigation. You understand my point? So it means that everybody in Ghana pays in advance for sanitation and then fumigation. So for government to introduce yet another tax known as sanitation and pollution tax as part of the tax build-up of 10 pesos is charging Ghanaians twice for a single job to be done. And so we felt that since Ghanaians were already paying through their district assemblies, that tax of 10 pesos is redundant and at best is robbery. And therefore, that should be taken. The third point is that if you look at the price build-up, there's a particular portion, a line item, known as the energy debt recovery levy. If you go back and read the reason for that tax, it is meant for, one, toll recovery levy, to be able to pay to settle the indebtedness of toll. Two, to settle downstream forest losses. And three, to support power generation and power. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly. I'm listening to you.
So these are the three reasons why when you go to buy petrol, they charge 48 pesos on the liter for that particular charge. Question. If you see, because now they say we have deregulated the market. If we have deregulated the market, anytime the CD depreciates against the dollar, OMCs and BDCs adjust their prices to take care of that. I don't know where you're getting the point I'm making. Two, if you see for power generation, what is the expenditure line item that power generation will take? Obviously, you and I know that it is about, they will say, capacity charges and what have you. So that one takes care of that. You understand my point? So for government to come again and introduce yet another tax known as energy sector levy. Remember, I'm not saying the energy debt recovery levy, but this one is energy sector levy of 20 pesos to perform the same role that the energy debt recovery levy, which they charge us 48 pesos for, is again a double way of charging us for the same job done. And again, that is robbery. And it will be taken off. Last but not the least, my brother, you recall that 2 weeks ago, government had indicated that they were suspending the price stabilization and recovery levy of 16 pesos per liter for petrol, 14 pesos per liter for diesel, and 14 pesos per 1 kilogram of LPG. This was what the NPA statement said. And they had indicated that they were expecting that the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Finance would work together to ensure that the legislative processes are sent through. The reason is because government has no power to take off the suspend the tax. It is Parliament that has to do it. And that's why they indicated that. But the question you need to ask yourself, and that's the most important question, what is this price stabilization and recovery levy? My brother, Senna, sorry about that. I have a very dry throat, so. And then, you see, the price stabilization and recovery levy is an insurance Ghanaians pay towards increase in fuel prices. What do I mean by an insurance? Ghanaians have told themselves that anytime I go and buy petrol, per liter, I'll pay 16 pesos. Saying that any day there's going to be an increase in fuel prices, government will use that money I have been paying all this period to take care of the increase. I don't know that making sense. So, for example, if say today I pay 1 cedi per liter for what do you call it? Petrol. And now fuel prices increase to 1 cedi 20 pesos per liter. Government would say, because you have been paying an insurance of 16 pesos per liter, I am going to still make you pay the 1 cedi per liter. However, the 20 pesos, I will use that to pay the OMCs and the BDCs. I don't know if I'm making sense. So once I pay 1 cedi, they will use the money from the price stabilization and recovery levy to pay for the 20 pesos. So that money is not for government. That money is for Ghanaians. The question you ask yourself is that, how has that money been expended since 2017 till now? Our calculations seem to suggest that we should be hovering in terms of collections around 2 billion. If that is the case, how has it been applied? So it is not just enough for government to indicate that they are suspending the price stabilization and recovery levy for 2 months. They must be transparent in how it has been applied and as to whether we cannot rely on that to further push down prices at the export. So if you look at all these factors that we have indicated, we think that government has all the opportunities and the avenues available to reduce price of fuel products at our pump stations. And that was the reason for which the press conference was held.
So let me go through the taxes you are talking about.
Yes.
So special petroleum tax.
Yes.
The sanitation levy.
Yes.
Energy sector levy. And then you're talking about
the price stabilization.
The price stabilization
and recovery levy. How have they used it?
Okay.
In fact, there are other ones we can look at, but just at least these are the 4 ones. If maybe you look, there are some of them that they are not just justifiable. But you see, we think that these ones that they introduced, they must take them off. Yeah.
Okay. So the ones that they have introduced, you said they introduced an energy sector levy. It wasn't part of the original.
They introduced the energy sector levy. They introduced the what do you call it? The sanitation and then
the COVID levy. I think
the sanitation pollution levy. Mm-hmm. And they reintroduced, and that's the word I'm using.
Okay.
Reintroduced the special petroleum tax. Because the special petroleum tax expired December 2017, and they brought another law to introduce it again. So they introduced this thing.
Even though the circumstances for which the special petroleum tax was introduced had changed.
In fact, for the better.
Far improved, but they still brought it back.
They still brought it back because now, as we speak, the reason was the SPT was brought, the special petroleum levy was brought, was because crude prices was $25 per barrel. So what is implemented was the Ghana was not getting much money from our crude. Today it is $90. So we are making more money. 2, the reason was because we were not producing higher volumes because of the problem we had with the FPSO Kwame Nkrumah. Now the FPSO Kwame Nkrumah is working at full capacity. Now we're even added 2 other fields. So we have more volumes. So these 2 conditions are now very different and even at a positive level where they can take off the SPT.
So before I move on to the other taxes, take us back to 2017 when this thing happened. You were a member of parliament for Bongo, member of parliament.
Yes, please.
When they were bringing this back in that year, what was the position of the minority?
The position, and I think that they can go back into the hazard and they'll realize that at least I know I debated and asked that levy should be taken off. I know Bawa did the same thing. I think a number of MPs equally did the same thing in taking off this. But of course, remember, at the end of the day, they always have a saying in parliament that goes that let the minority have their say and the majority have their way. They had 169. We had 106. And so it definitely surpassed.
And at this point in time, so the special petroleum tax.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so as it is in its current form, is backed by law passed by parliament.
Yes.
So what can be done?
So these are the things. You know that, as I said, that the statement that came from the the MPA, National Petroleum Authority, was that the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Energy should work together to ensure that the legislative process in suspending the special petroleum the price stabilization and recovery levy is done. So it means that we'll bring it to Parliament. As part of our argument, we will say that in addition to that, the issue of the SPT, the issue of the sanitation and pollution, and the issue of energy sector levies must be added to this suspension and to ensure that those things are taken off. That's the first avenue for us. The second avenue is that on the 15th thereabout of November, the minister will be coming to Parliament to read the budget for the 2022 fiscal year. What it simply means is that all taxes are subject to scrutiny, and we will be pushing to ensure that those taxes on the price build-up are taken off.
Is this, I don't know, because you're talking about arguments, but perhaps what you are also talking about, in essence, with the budget is perhaps a demand and a precondition. Is that what we'll be looking at, or you haven't taken that decision yet? That a precondition for approving the budget will, for example, be that we want at least a special petroleum tax off?
Obviously, we have made our position that we want it off. The details of as to whether it will be precondition, it will be what, I think that will be left to the leadership, and that is led by the able Harun Idrisu to look at. But one thing I do know is that there's a clear conviction, and even the vibe among all members of Parliament, particularly in the minority side, seem to suggest that, look, some taxes must go. And based on the arguments we have made, we think that these taxes that we have listed are taxes that we can really make do and still have the services for which these taxes are supposed to fund still go on.
Because the argument about the price stabilization and recovery levy alone, I think that can be settled now, because you're talking about the fact that we accumulate money so that tomorrow when things are not so well, and the consumer is paying through their nose like we are in the current situation, we will take that money and say, how much of the increment can we cover with the money? And use it to pay for that increment.
You have summarized what it is the money is meant for. That is just what the money is meant for.
Now the government is telling us that, what we are doing is that we are suspending the payment of the levy.
Yes.
And they are not telling us where the money, how much we have and what we can use it for.
Fantastic. So that is exactly what they are. So that's why there has been a general call on the fact that the price stabilization and the recovery levy should go. They should account for at least what we have accumulated. I do know that beyond just the minority, I also do know that ASEP also issued a statement to that effect. I do know that the Institute of Energy, something, I'm not too sure, this Kojo Poku's group also issued a statement to that effect. So I know there are a number of energy-related civil society organizations who have raised those issues. And I know that Parliament has also raised that issue. And so it is a battle that we intend engaging the state with.
Then there's the sanitation levy. As for that one, a lot of us still do not understand. But the sanitation levy, I believe, was introduced in the 2021 budget, right?
It was introduced, in the 2021 budget.
So can we hold you in the minority to book? You had the numbers.
Yeah, we sometimes exaggerate our numbers. You just need, for budget, you need a simple majority to go through. You understand my point? You recall that there were votes that we did. And at the time that it came to Parliament to pass that, we already had some challenges. We had 3 of our members who were in critical care for COVID. And so we didn't even have the numbers. So, and they had hit all their numbers. So even when we did the voting, you recall that there was a vote that was done. And then we lost that vote because post the confirmation of the speaker, we had some of our members getting COVID. And in fact, we're even at the critical, the ICUs of the various hospitals. And therefore, we're not present. So sometimes when we talk about our numbers, instead of we have the numbers, I mean, remember that it's Pepe, and they have even one additional person, and that is the independent candidate. So anytime there's a shortage of one person on our side, we always have a challenge. So to say we have the numbers is an over-exaggeration. Yeah, we have numbers that can push them to a point, but that is if all of us are present.
I don't know. You don't understand why always we come to you rather than going to the general parliament. We are always expecting that your side is the side that holds that ensures that the interest of the Ghanaian protected. You do understand why, right?
Yeah, I know. It is a legitimate. It is a legitimate request to make. It's a legitimate request to make. But just the point I'm just trying to make is that as we deal with those things, we must also be very realistic in the numbers that we have. We have 137, 138 in terms of balance of power in Parliament. So any day that everybody is present, unless government, for example, let me give you a typical example. The issue of this mining concession thing that they're talking about, this rockshore. By the constitution, you need 2/3. So there, they don't have it. But wherever you have a simple majority, it becomes a problem. And normally, the simple majority is when you are able to form a quorum, those who are present and voting. That is how you do and calculate the simple majority. And I was saying that at that time in March, when we were approving the budget finally, remember that after the election they came back, and that's how we made it in March. When we came in March to get the budget approved, what happened was that at that time we had 3 of our members who were critically ill from COVID, and therefore were not even present to vote. And so, from the beginning, we didn't have the numbers. But of course, we stated our concerns, and we stated them very forcefully, and it was captured. But we are saying that better late than never. We still have an opportunity to review those taxes come this year, and we are hoping that that we will be able to at least hold them to the fire, to be able to prove to us the legitimacy and the relevance of those taxes, and particularly what are the specific services that those taxes are supposed to fund, and as to whether we do not already have funds for those ones. We will subject all those things to the necessary litmus test.
But before I let you go, you are saying the energy sector levy of 20 pesos and the energy debt recovery levy of 48 pesos.
Yes.
Are both doing the same thing?
They are both doing the same thing because the 48 pesos, the energy debt recovery levy, it's part of it is supposed to be for power generation and infrastructure support. That's power infrastructure support. So that's a portion that is for power. So to come back again and say energy sector levy, which is also for power, is double stuff. That's the only one. 2, you also still have a situation where your district assembly takes part of your money and pay for sanitation, and they'll come and charge you again for fuel for the same sanitation, for the same job. So for the same service, you are paying twice.
It's quite interesting because you passed a law in, I think, was it 2015, the ESLA? So,
yeah, the energy sector level.
So you passed a law in 2015 to take care of a problem. It was described as nuisance, and people saw in Parliament that they were going to resist it with the last of their blood.
Yes.
Now, just somehow you turned up in opposition unexpectedly.
Yes.
Now you are fighting for that law to be taken off by the same people who swore to resist it with their blood. That's the situation you find yourself in.
That's the situation. I say we have, and again, to put it just that way without going further to explain, will seem to look like we are being hypocritical. Our thing was that when we passed the law, we said it was just to be in our books for just 2 years, and these people fought against it. When the 2 years came, we expected the law to be taken out. They reintroduced it, and they are collecting money for it. However, the reason for which we even passed the law, the conditions are no longer the same. The conditions are not favorable, and therefore it is no longer tenable to charge Ghanaians for that particular thing, and they are still hesitant. Not to say they are hesitant is a mild word. In fact, they are fighting with their very blood to keep it there at a time when Ghanaians obviously do not need to be paying that.